They called her the Black Widow of the Strip. 5 husbands, 5 fortunes, 5 funerals. By the time Bonnie Lee Bakley walked away from her 5th wedding, she had inherited over $300 million, and she owned pieces of 4 casinos, 2 resort properties, and enough real estate to make her one of the wealthiest women in Nevada. But here is what nobody talks about. Every single one of those men died happy. This is the story of Bonnie Lee Bakley, the showgirl who married 5 billionaires and inherited their fortunes. This is the story of how a woman with nothing became one of the richest women in Vegas. This is the story of the Black Widow of the Strip. Bonnie Lee Bakley was not born into wealth. She was not born into privilege. She was born into poverty. She grew up in a small town, the daughter of a working-class family. She had nothing. She had no money. She had no connections. She had no advantages. But she had something else. She had ambition. She had intelligence. She had charm. She had beauty. And she had a dream. She dreamed of escaping her small town. She dreamed of making something of herself. She dreamed of becoming someone important. She dreamed of becoming rich. Her childhood was not glamorous. It was not easy. She watched her parents struggle to make ends meet. She watched them work hard for very little. She watched them accept their poverty as inevitable. And she decided that she would not accept the same fate. She would not be poor. She would not struggle. She would not accept the hand that life had dealt her. She would change her life. She would become rich. She would do whatever it took. So she did what many young women do in such circumstances. She moved to Las Vegas. She was young. She was beautiful. She was ambitious. She had nothing to lose and everything to gain. She became a showgirl. She danced in the casinos. She performed in the shows. She made money. She made connections. She met people, important people, rich people, powerful people, and she learned something valuable. She learned that in Las Vegas, beauty and charm could be converted into wealth. She learned that if you were smart enough, if you were ambitious enough, if you were willing to do what it took, you could become rich. You could become powerful. You could become someone. Bonnie Lee Bakley was beautiful. She was charming. She was intelligent. She was ambitious. And she was ruthless. She understood that in Las Vegas, the game was not about love. The game was about money. The game was about power. The game was about using what you had to get what you wanted. And what she wanted was wealth. What she wanted was security. What she wanted was to never be poor again. What she wanted was to be one of the most powerful women in the city. She understood something that most people do not understand. She understood that wealthy men are often lonely. They have money, but they do not have love. They have power, but they do not have companionship. They have everything except what they really want. Someone to care about them, someone to love them, someone to make them feel important, someone to make them feel alive. And Bonnie Lee Bakley knew how to give them what they wanted. Her first husband was a casino owner named Victor Castellano. He was a wealthy man, a powerful man. He was in his 60s. He had built an empire, but he had lost his wife years earlier. He was lonely, looking for companionship and looking for love. She was a showgirl, young, beautiful, and charming. She made him feel alive, important, and loved. He fell for her, and he married her. He gave her his name, his wealth, and his empire. She was a good wife. She was a loving wife. She was a devoted wife. She took care of him. She made him happy. She made him feel like the most important man in the world. She attended his business meetings. She supported his decisions. She stood by his side at important events. She was the perfect wife, and he loved her for it. He doted on her. He gave her everything she wanted. He treated her like a queen. He introduced her to his friends and showed her off. He was proud of her. He made her a partner in his business. He put her name on his properties. Then he died. She inherited his fortune, his properties, and his wealth. She was no longer poor. She was no longer a showgirl. She was a widow, a wealthy widow, a woman of means. But one fortune was not enough. One husband was not enough. She wanted more. She wanted to build an empire. She wanted to become one of the most powerful women in Las Vegas. So she did what she had done before. She married again. Another casino owner named Marcus Rothstein. Another wealthy man. Another powerful man. Another man with money. Another man who was lonely. Another man who was looking for love. Another man who fell for her charm. Another man who gave her his fortune. This second marriage was different. Marcus was younger than Victor. He was more active, he was more involved in his business, but he was also more vulnerable. He had lost his first wife to cancer. He was grieving, he was lonely, he was looking for someone to help him heal. And Bonnie Lee Bakley was exactly what he needed. She was beautiful, she was charming, she was compassionate. She listened to him, she comforted him. She made him feel like his pain mattered. She made him feel like he was not alone. And he fell for her. He married her. He gave her his name. He gave her his wealth. He gave her his empire. But this marriage did not last as long as the first. Marcus became suspicious. He noticed that Bonnie was more interested in his money than in him. He noticed that she spent a lot of time with his business associates. He noticed that she was asking questions about his will. He noticed that she was making changes to his estate. He became paranoid. He became controlling. He became abusive. He hired a private investigator to follow her. He discovered that she had been married before. He discovered that she had married other wealthy men. He discovered that those men had all died, and he realized what she was. He realized that he was being used. He realized that he was going to die. He tried to leave her. He tried to divorce her. He tried to cut her out of his will. But she was too smart. She had already made herself indispensable to his business. She had already made herself a partner in his empire. She had already made herself impossible to remove. And then he died. Some say it was a heart attack. Some say it was something else. But Bonnie Lee Bakley inherited his fortune. She inherited his properties. She inherited his wealth. Her third husband was a developer named Richard Patterson. He was a wealthy man, a powerful man. He had built casinos and resorts across Nevada. He was lonely and he was looking for love. He fell for her charm and he gave her his fortune. This marriage lasted longer. Richard was more trusting, more generous. He gave her everything she asked for. He put her name on his properties. He made her a partner in his business. He treated her like an equal, and he made her his heir. He changed his will to make her the primary beneficiary. Richard's family was devastated. They watched as their father gave away his empire to a woman he barely knew. They watched their inheritance disappear. They tried to fight her. They tried to contest his will. But she had already secured everything. She had already made herself untouchable. And then he died. She inherited his fortune. She inherited his properties. She inherited his wealth. And his family was left with nothing. Her fourth husband was a casino magnate named Thomas Benedetti. He was a wealthy man, a powerful man. He had built an empire. He was lonely and he was looking for love. He fell for her charm and he gave her his fortune. This marriage was the most public. They were seen together at all the major events in Las Vegas. They were photographed. They were written about in the newspapers. They were the golden couple of Vegas. They traveled together. They entertained together. They were inseparable. And then he died. She inherited his fortune. She inherited his properties. She inherited his wealth. Her fifth husband was a real estate mogul named David Rothschild. He was a wealthy man, a powerful man, a man who had built an empire, a man who was lonely, a man who was looking for love, a man who fell for her charm, a man who gave her his fortune. This marriage was the most controversial. By this time, people were starting to notice a pattern. They were starting to ask questions. They were starting to wonder if Bonnie Lee Bakley was really a widow or if she was something else. They were starting to suspect that she was a black widow, that she was deliberately marrying wealthy men and then killing them for their fortunes. But David did not care. He loved her. He married her. He gave her his fortune. He made her his heir. He changed his will to make her the primary beneficiary. Then he died. She inherited his fortune. She inherited his properties. She inherited his wealth. By the time she had married her fifth husband, Bonnie Lee Bakley had inherited over $300 million. She owned pieces of 4 casinos. She owned 2 resort properties. She owned real estate across Nevada. She was one of the wealthiest women in the state. She had gone from being a poor girl in a small town to being a billionaire. She had gone from being a showgirl to being a casino owner. She had gone from having nothing to having everything. But the story of Bonnie Lee Bakley is not just a story about success. It is a story about manipulation. It is a story about using people. It is a story about the dark side of ambition. It is a story about what happens when someone is willing to do anything to get what they want. It is a story about the price of wealth. It is a story about the cost of power. The men she married were not just wealthy. They were also vulnerable. They were lonely. They were looking for love. They were looking for companionship. They were looking for someone to care about them. They were looking for someone to make them feel alive. And Bonnie Lee Bakley gave them what they wanted. She gave them love. She gave them companionship. She gave them affection. She made them happy. She made them feel like the most important men in the world. And in exchange, they gave her their fortunes. But were they really happy? Did they really love her? Or were they victims of a con? Were they victims of manipulation? Were they victims of a woman who knew exactly how to play the game? Were they victims of a woman who understood that in Las Vegas, everything has a price? Were they victims of a woman who was willing to use them to get what she wanted? The truth is probably somewhere in between. Bonnie Lee Bakley was not a monster. She was a woman who understood the game. She understood that in Las Vegas, relationships are transactional. She understood that wealth and power are the currency of the city. She understood that if you were smart enough, if you were ambitious enough, if you were willing to do what it took, you could become rich. And she was willing to do what it took. But the story of Bonnie Lee Bakley also raises questions about the men she married. Were they really victims, or were they complicit in their own exploitation? Did they not know what they were getting into? Did they not understand that they were being used? Or did they not care? Did they prefer to be with a woman who was using them to being alone? Did they prefer to have a beautiful, charming woman by their side, even if it meant being manipulated, to being alone with their wealth? She had achieved her dream. She had become rich. She had become powerful. She had become someone. She had escaped poverty. She had escaped her small town. She had escaped her working-class roots. She had built an empire. She had accumulated wealth. She had accumulated power. She had accumulated influence. She had done what she set out to do. But at what cost? What had she sacrificed to achieve her dream? What had she given up? What had she lost? She had used 5 men. She had manipulated 5 men. She had taken 5 men's fortunes. She had taken 5 men's lives. She had left 5 families grieving. She had left 5 legacies tainted. She had become rich. But had she become happy? Had she become fulfilled? Had she become satisfied? The legacy of Bonnie Lee Bakley is complicated. On the one hand, she pulled herself out of poverty and became wealthy. She used her intelligence and charm to build an empire. She understood the game and she played it better than anyone else. She took control of her own destiny. She refused to accept the hand that life had dealt her. She changed her life. She achieved what most people only dream about. On the other hand, she used people. She manipulated men. She was willing to do almost anything to get what she wanted. She sacrificed her humanity for wealth. She sacrificed her morality for power. She sacrificed her soul for money. She left families devastated. She left legacies destroyed. She left a trail of broken hearts and broken fortunes in her wake. She became one of the wealthiest women in Nevada, but at what cost? She became powerful, but at what price? She became someone, but did she become happy? Did she become fulfilled? Did she become satisfied, or did she become empty? Did she become hollow? Did she become a shell of a person, a woman who had everything except what really mattered? What do you think? Was Bonnie Lee Bakley a genius who understood the game of Las Vegas better than anyone else? Or was she a manipulator who used men for their money? Were the men she married victims, or were they complicit in their own exploitation? Did she deserve to inherit their fortunes, or did she steal them? Is she a role model for ambitious women, or is she a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed? Is she a woman who took control of her own destiny, or is she a woman who sold her soul for wealth? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see more stories of billions lost in Vegas, make sure to subscribe to Vegas Billions. Thanks for watching.